Hey, it's me, Margaret, and I have a great hat to share with you today. This is done on the Addi Express king size, and it is a pattern by Melissa Sutcliffe. Melissa is a friend from Australia, and she asked me if I wouldn't mind demonstrating this. Now, I will tell you that she finishes the top in a different way. I've got instructions for that way, but you could also do it quickly with the closed top, which is more of a traditional Addi hat like this, and I did this just so you could see. Now, it is a double layer hat, so super warm, but the difference is this ribbing that you see down here. I had never seen anybody do a ribbing like that on a double fold hat, and I loved it, and I told her I'd be happy to demonstrate this for her. So kind of tricky. I would not say that this is a beginner project. This is ribbing done on the machine. It can be tedious, it can be a little frustrating, especially if you're not really familiar with the machine, but I do walk you through it, so if you want to go for it, do. Now, a word about sizing. Melissa reminded us when she posted this pattern on Facebook that fewer rows may be called for depending on your ply. She says that the green is an Aussie 8 ply and the pink is an American worsted weight number 4. Now, I'm looking at it and I think that that's Red Heart's Unforgettable, and if it is, it's actually a very light worsted number 4, almost a DK. I used a very heavy American worsted, Lion Brand's Vannish Choice, so mine came out a little long. So keep this in mind when choosing your yarn. If you have never done ribbing before, I would suggest you start with a lighter yarn because it is a little challenging to get it off the needle and then back on the needle with the thicker worsted. So think about that. So I really, really liked it. But enough of my chit chat. Let's get started. Now, I know some people prefer a written pattern to work from, so I'll copy Melissa's instructions and put a link to them in the description box below. First, you'll cast on and knit 1 row of waste yarn. Just use the basic cast on of every other needle, and be sure to choose a contrasting color so it'll be easy to see the difference. Switch to your main yarn and knit about 42 rows. Remember to do fewer if you're working with a heavier yarn. Now, for row 43, we're going to add what I'm calling a marker yarn. You'll need enough to go around one time, and that's about 1.5 yards, give or take a little. Now, because we're knitting it right along with our main yarn, I choose a very thin yarn. This won't add any extra tension on this row, and it'll make it pretty easy to remove when the time comes. Its purpose is to give us a temporary visual of where to stop our ribbing when we get to that stage a little later. Tying a knot is totally unnecessary since this is only a marker yarn and doesn't contribute to the structure of the hat in any way. But I confess that I wasn't thinking and I tied it out of habit. It doesn't make any difference one way or another, so let's just proceed to the next step, which is to knit 26 more rows. Okay, let's stop a second right here and have a word about ribbing. Now, we're working on the Addi Express king size, which is a 46 needle machine, and 46 is a weird number. Now, in knitting, people have preferences, the way they like to do things. Some people like to do 1 by 1 ribbing, which is knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl all the way around. Some people like to do 2 by 2 ribbing, which is 2 knits, knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, purl all the way around. That's what I like to do usually when I'm knitting with needles. The problem is that you need to be able to divide your total number of stitches by 4 in order to do a knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, purl, because the pattern repeats through 4 stitches, right? Nothing goes into 46 except for 1 and 2. So, Melissa tells us what she prefers. She says, now do your rib. I've done 1 purl and 2 plain. That would be 2 knits where you just leave it alone. Yes, I end up with 1 rib and 1 knit right at the end. So while her pattern all the way around is going knit, purl, purl, knit, purl, purl all the way around. At the very end, that pattern is going to break because she has only 46 needles to work with. And that's fine. That's hardly going to be noticed. As my mother used to say, it'll never be noticed on a galloping horse. Now the benefit to doing that is this working on the Addi, doing the rib stitch is a little bit awkward, and some can consider it tedious. And therefore, that is fewer numbers of ribbing on the machine that you have to do if you use that 1 and then skip 2 stitches, 1, skip 2 stitches pattern, which makes a lot of sense to me. But because I thought people would want to see the difference in what it may look like, and to see that it really doesn't make a difference, I'm choosing to do the 1x1 rib here. Now I've already got us started, so come look closer. Now at first glance you may look at this and say, oh, that looks so messy. Don't worry about it, it's going to look fine. When we finish, all the stitches kind of wiggle around and they all get to working great, and life is wonderful. So don't let the way it looks right now influence your thoughts on this just yet. So what's about to happen? Well, in a nutshell, we're going to drop a stitch on purpose, crochet it up again upside down, and then hook it back on the machine. Now what you're going to need to get this thing done is a crochet hook, and I have found that I like to work with a larger one. This is a size J 6mm, and I like the larger head. It doesn't make any difference because your gauge is actually coming from the stitches on the machine, not from your crochet hook. So choose whatever is comfortable for you. Now something else you might want for this is a loom pick. Now the reason why, sometimes I can do it, if I just have 1 or 2 I need to do, or fixing a stitch or something, I'll just use my needle to pry it off the machine. But if you'll see, a loom pick is actually longer in the bent part of the needle. It's also a little stronger than this plastic needle, and I made the mistake of using a thicker worsted on this project. Alright, so let's see. I'm doing every other stitch. Okay, so I've done this one. I won't do this one, but I will do this one. So let's get this one in this position. Okay, I just finished this one. I don't want to do this one, but I do want to do this one. So I'm going to knit, make sure that goes down. I'm going to skip that one, and then I'm going to put this one right here in the ready position. Now the ready position is not right in front of this, it's right before you get to it. And I've gotten it off. And once I do, I drop it and then just kind of poke it with the soft side here, and that will run it down. Okay, can you see there's my little red yarn, there's a purl bump, and so this is where I'm starting it, right here. There's my little red marker, so it's actually this stitch. You see I want the red marker and a little purl bump that goes with it. And it's that stitch that I want so that it looks like that. Then switch to your crochet hook and you start putting the ladders on. The ladder goes in front like that, and then you pull over the loop. Pick up the ladder, pull over the loop. Pick up the ladder, pull over the loop. It's very easy to do while you're down here because everything is slack. And as you climb closer to the machine where it's being stretched wider, it becomes a little bit harder to do. Whoops, I got 2. Because of the tautness. It becomes a little harder to do because of the tautness. But it's not too bad. And the best part about it is if you have to answer the phone or do something, you can just hang your crochet hook on it right there. And in my case, I'm adjusting the camera for you. Okay, so let's see. There's the next one right there. And the next one. I'm doing them one at a time and in order. Now, I don't know if you can see because it's dark down there, but I've gotten to that last one and it's very difficult to pick it up with a crochet hook. So I get my loom knit hook, my pick, and put it there, and then yarn over like that. And then to get it off of the crochet hook, I use my loom pick too. And stretch it out. I mean, push those other things down. Don't be afraid to pull on it. Your yarn should be tough enough. Put it over everything. The two little red teeth and the hook. Okay, and as it goes around, make sure that you press down the red teeth on either side of the red teeth to make sure it catches. Okay, so we just did this one. We're not going to do this one, but we are going to do this one. So I move along. Not that one, but ta-da! Alright, I just finished this. I put it back on. It's traveling around now. I am making sure that it goes down around those teeth when it passes the yarn feeder. Okay, so now I don't want this one. This is the one I did. I don't want this one. I do want to work on this one. Now notice how the yarn is coming up at this point. You see that? Keep turning it slowly and you'll see it go behind the needle, and there's some other yarn beneath there. Right there. Get that yarn, push it down on either side of those teeth, and then travel back a little bit to lower that needle. Not too much because you don't want to mess up what's going on this side of the machine. Okay, so now you can grab that yarn. Make sure you get all of it and you don't split it. And you can work with that needle. Push it out of the way. And poof, over it goes. And then you can rip the needle down. Rip the yarn down. So I'll take my crochet hook, I point it toward me, and put it through that last loop. Now what I'm going to do is pick up each of these individual ladders and loop them over and do a basically chaining. So I picked up that ladder, put it on the crochet hook, and now I go over it like that. So I'll pick up the next ladder. You can do it either with your hand or you could dip it down in there. And then I'm going to put the old loop over the hook. And you basically are re-knitting backwards. You're doing a reverse knit stitch, also known as a purl, on the opposite side. Now be warned that when you come to that last one, it's getting kind of tight because it's really stretched right here on the machine. So you may want to use your loom pick, put it on there, and then use your pick to pull it over as if you were loom knitting. Okay, so there it is. This last loop that's on your crochet hook, that has to go back on the machine. So take it out and then finagle best you can, putting it over all parts. Come here, let me show you. Put it over everything. The two little red teeth and the hook. Okay, and as it goes around, make sure that you press down the red teeth on either side of the red teeth to make sure it catches. So now that you know how to do the ribbing, complete it all the way around, and when you get back to the beginning, you'll knit another 43 rows. And after that, just as we cast on with contrasting waste yarn, we'll be casting off with it as well. But here's a little tip. Don't cut your main yarn. Instead, pick it up and put it in the middle of your work. Leaving it attached like this makes it easier to do whatever bind off you choose once it's off the machine. If you need a refresher on how to cast on and off or change colors, I'll put a link in the description box below. So here's our finished project, and you can see that the ribbing is straightening up nicely. The more you pull on it and manipulate it in different directions, everything just pulls into the right place and it looks great. Now, this is done just like a reversible hat where you stuff one inside the other, one end inside the other. We had our little extra yarn right here that we used for marking our place. So we need to remove that, and it's probably best done from the inside. I had a lightly tied knot right there. And then you just very gingerly begin pulling. Just very patiently pull, because it may, you never know when it may have gotten twisted or tucked in with the yarn that you were knitting it with. So just very patiently pull it out, and when that yarn, if it pops up, just wiggle it around and it'll go back down. Okay, I'll meet you back around when that's finished. Now you can finish this hat off in a variety of ways. Basically what you're doing is closing these two ends, and then you stuff one end inside another. Now Melissa's favorite way is to hold them together like this, use a crochet hook, and you join this shut. I call that the crochet version of a 3-needle bind-off. So if you are a knitter, you will know what a 3-needle bind-off is. The waste yarn indicates where, it's so, you know, the contrast color indicates very clearly where the stitch is that you need to pick up, right there. I'm going to link the instructions for how to do this in the description box below. But don't forget that you could also use your basic closure, which would be a drawstring closure at each end, and that's what I'll do right now. Now of course you could have done a drawstring closure when you take it off the machine, but this is a much quicker way, and if you have an Innovations machine or a Prim Maxi, you may prefer to take it off with waste yarn. So basically cut yourself off a nice length and put it on a tapestry needle, and then you pick up each of these stitches as you go along. And then when you've collected all of them, then you pull it tight for a drawstring closure. Okay, and you look to see, making sure that that stitch is secured with a blue, and it is. So now I can just remove my orange waste yarn, pull tight to close. And so you're end as you normally would. Now the way I do it, it's coming from this direction, so I continue that direction by catching those stitches again, same stitches actually, and pulling it tightly. You see how it's closing up? And let's see, I'll do that again. And there's lots of ways to do this. You don't have to do it this way. Whatever works for you. Now I go back the other direction. Now it's coming out right there. So I'll skip over that stitch and enter that direction right there. And keep going around in that direction. And when I feel that it's secure enough, I can stop. Then you'll want to flip to the other side and repeat the whole process with your cast-on edge. So to completely finish it, you're going to want to stuff one in inside the other. See how nice that looks with the ribbing down there? And I like to sew the ends together. You do not have to do this at all, but I just feel like it completes the hat so that when you're washing it, it doesn't come apart in the wash. Now the way I do that is I take my needle and I put it in the dead center right there. And then turning it inside out a little bit, I put my needle through the center in the inside as well. Then just to the side of it, just enough that you're catching maybe one stitch or two. Flip it back over so you can see what you're doing. And then I put it back through the middle. And you can knot it if you like. Some people do not like to knot their knitting. I tend to do that same little loop that I showed you a minute ago. Where I kind of go back in the other direction. And then I hide some of it like that. You can also hide your string. You don't have to cut it and leave any kind of string there. It's coming out of this end, so as close to where it comes out as possible. I'll insert it back in there, and then I not through 2 layers, but only through 1 layer of hat. Pull it through. And then wherever it's coming out, stick it back in there. Again, you're only hiding it behind this first layer. And then pull tightly, give it a snip, and when you straighten it out, the tail is hidden inside. And there's your hat with the ribbing on the bottom. Very, very cute. So many thanks to Melissa Sutcliffe for sharing this pattern with us. You can find her on the Facebook group Addie King Loomers and Knits. She's there sharing a lot of her expertise, which is pretty nice to know. Actually, everybody on that group is very keen to share and to teach, and it's not just for Addie, by the way, it's for other things. So if you've got Facebook, join that. It's a great group. But anyhow, thanks, Melissa. Talk soon. Bye-bye.